Heyo everybody, Haku here with my review for episode 3 of Toaru Kagaku no Accelerator, or A Certain Scientific Accelerator, and I said last week that, I had some criticisms last week, but overall I was generally positive. I said that I liked it a bit better than the first episode, but this one was so much better than the first two. And I think last episode did a really good job at setting Accelerator apart and making it its own show, or making it feel like its own show, and this did even better at that. But just in general, this was a great episode. Like the first two, they were good. I don't think they were bad at all. They were good. But this went beyond good into great territory. This one, I loved this episode. So yeah, everything about it, start to finish, there was just really good, sort of the more plot-heavy, action-y stuff, and really good slice-of-life moments. The editing and the direction, I think, were the best part. That was done so well. The animation too looked better. I feel like the music in the background, the soundtrack, was really great. So yeah, everything about the episode, I loved it. I thought it was just a big step up from the first two episodes. And it was so funny because I was like, how did Accelerator become so relatable? Because the first time I was watching this, I watched it twice. I watched it my first time, and then I got some general notes and thoughts on it. And then I went through watching it a second time, taking notes on sort of the scene by scene stuff to make sure I didn't miss anything important my second time through watching. But my first time through watching, I think the first instance was when the guy from DA was going on about his long spiel and everything while we were seeing the flashes of Esther's story in the background. And then when all that was over, I just said to myself, what is going on? This is complicated. And at the same time, I'm saying that Accelerator says something like, I even put it in the notes somewhere, oh, what are you rambling on about? I was like, same, totally same. Or then after all that happened, Esther is like, oh man, it's all my fault, I'm terrible, I shouldn't have taught him how to use this. And I'm just like, what does that matter? And at the same time, Accelerator says, so what? And I'm like, oh my god, same once again. So I just thought two really funny instances of being like, Accelerator really is speaking for the people watching here. But yeah, Esther's a very good character. I said last episode that I really liked her, but I like her even more this episode. She's really good. And Last Order is amazing. I again said that I think Last Order and her relationship with Accelerator could carry the show, and she totally could. She was so good. Her voice acting was really great, and that's again something I brought up. The voice acting in general for this show was really good, but everything with Last Order was so funny. We didn't see her in any really serious scenes this time around, but I think she could carry some serious scenes too. This is just in a few episodes has seriously made me like and respect the relationship between Last Order and Accelerator more than Index has. Just in a few episodes it's done that. From there was also another thing I loved about it. The fusion between science and magic was done really well, where we're having some magic-y stuff come into this generally science-based story that you would assume Accelerator would have, because Railgun is extremely science-based. There's pretty much none of the magic side of things in Railgun. So to bring some of the magic stuff into Accelerator is an interesting choice. It sets it apart, makes it different from Railgun. And I love the way that we're seeing it in a way that's totally different from the way it's usually presented in Index, which is like there's magic going on, there's science going on, and sometimes they interact. Where with this, it was much more like Accelerator viewing magic through the eyes of science. Like he was trying to figure out how all this stuff works from a science perspective. And I'll get to talk more about that when I'm going through scene by scene and talking about what happened in the scene, but I just thought that was a really good way to write things. So now, let me talk about it scene by scene. That was just my general bullet point notes I took after watching the first time. Let's talk about the more in-depth stuff about what actually happened, though, because there is still even a lot more that I liked on the scene-to-scene basis. So I love the opening sequences. This is something I thought the first time I watched. just the way that everything was, again, directed and edited together with them on the motorcycle and seeing these flashes, these sort of, I don't even want to call them hallucinations, but just generally visual things to show us how Esther is feeling in an interesting and different way rather than just straight telling us. And then to see the flashes of her back story kind of a little bit in some of the things she was feeling while the guy was talking Hishigata. I thought that was done really, really well too. So from there we see the guy from the last episode. I couldn't figure out, or I couldn't remember which one was Basset Hound and which one was Dachshund, but the one that was just generally the bad guy of last episode, the head henchman guy, had been melted. He's been taken out. And we knew from the end of last episode that that was going to happen. Now, whichever one's still alive, I'm just going to call him Hishigata because it's easier. He mentions Kyonki, which I think is referring to the robot he's in, and we don't see the girl he was with, but we see a lot of flashes of her throughout the episode, so I have my own theories with her, but I'm thinking maybe she was what is operating this robot, because we know this robot has a psychokinetic ability raised to level 5, so maybe she was a level 3, and she is the one that is being used to fuel this robot, like, what was her name? Hasami was used to fuel the one last episode. So I'm thinking maybe that's the situation here, since, again, when he was talking about Kyonki and the robot or whatever, we saw flashes of Esther thinking of that girl. Now, last episode, I heard the name Hishigata mentioned, and I was like, maybe that's the scientist guy, because we don't really have a real name for him yet. And yeah, pretty much confirmed his name's Hishigata Hikihito. So yeah, he was that guy. Now, he mentions the evil spirits of Numbers, and Numbers is capitalized. The title of the episode, I think, even is Numbers. And they mention 2 other people's names, so I'm thinking Numbers is something to do with Esther's family, or maybe referencing the specific... They aren't using the word zombies, but numbers is what their word for zombies is, maybe, that they're using to power these machines. So I'm thinking that might be the case, because again, it's a capitalized Numbers. It seems to be a proper name for something. Also, I think the situation here, again, with that girl, the way that Esther keeps having flashbacks to her, she seems sad about what's happened to her, the way she talks about herself and what she's done using people, I feel like that girl is someone who's died, but Esther brought her back to life, and now this guy's using her to power that robot. That's just my theory from trying to put together what we've seen so far. But again, as we continue on with the season and watch more, I'm sure much more of it'll be elucidated and explained. But yeah, generally, all of that was really, really good. Those are just some of my ideas about it. I like, though, as we're going through all that, this is where we get to what I said, where he's just going on about a spiel while we see Esther struggling internally and having these flashes of stuff, and it was all directed very well. And then Accelerator just says, "What are you rambling about?" So I loved it. It was great. And I actually really liked this great explanation of how the guy in the robot, Hishigata, is surviving Accelerator's attack, because this is something that's not always necessarily been explained in Index, but he can change the vector only with what he's touching. So when he's doing these wind blasts, he's like powering up the wind, heating it up, charging it electrically, but it's basically a physical attack when it hits the robot. So if the robot can withstand this heated, charged wind, then it's all good, because the vectors are only changing with what he's touching. So as long as he stays at long range, he is not totally safe, but he is safer from what Accelerator can do. So again, I like that we got an actual explanation of how their powers are working as they're fighting, because especially if somebody was coming in as someone who hadn't watched Index and Accelerator's their first time coming at the series, that explanation would be quite helpful. So also from there he mentions that yeah, the robot's using level 5 psychokinesis. The way that it was animated was really cool. I thought, again, the animation quality was up this episode from where it was last episode, and even last episode it certainly wasn't bad, but it was even better this time around. So I liked the way that was all animated, where he blew the roof off and was able to jump out and stuff. I thought it looked cool. And then, of course, Esther getting down on herself, and Accelerator just says, "So what?" So yeah, of course, because it's not really her fault. I mean, she may be messed up, but it's not like she purposefully went around doing terrible things, knowing well the consequences of what her actions would be, because she didn't. Um, but then we get back to the hospital room and we get our first scenes with Last Order, and her dialogue was so good. Just from top to bottom, every scene she was in, the way that she was written and narrating her things that she says is always kind of good, but sometimes I think there are a lot of scenes you could probably point to in Index 2 like that. It's just kind of just the general whatever. Of what she's doing, says Misaka as she does something, and it's just the general what she's physically doing, but there was so much more personality written into the dialogue here. Like, "I got 3 lunches," says Misaka, hiding the fact that she bought snacks for herself. I love when they add this extra stuff in, and when she was interrogating Esther, all of it was really good. And I love one of the funniest scenes too was when she's interrogating Esther and she's like, "So who are you?" And she's like, I'm Esther Rosenthal, I do necromancy," and then Accelerator cuts her off. But just "I do necromancy" was the funniest line to just throw out as part of your introduction to a new character. And the next scene was super funny too. Again, this is probably something I didn't mention in my general notes, but this was an episode that made me laugh a lot. This is probably the scene that made me laugh the most, when she throws the food at Accelerator. And you know how they're like the over-the-top anime sound effects that happen during fight scenes sometimes, where they just have this like deep echoey bass and then like a bam gunshot-ish hit. They used those for the lunchboxes hitting Accelerator in the face, and just the sound effects they used were killing me. And then right after that, as Last Order is running to hide, they throw in these cartoony sound effects. All of them were really, really good. But then cutting away from them a little bit as they go to the family restaurant, we go to Heaven's Chancellor, can't remember which it is, but he's inspecting the body of the girl from last episode that was used, and he finds this tag, seal, whatever. And then we get our scene with the family restaurant, and I loved it. I love that in all 3 shows the characters keep coming back to this family restaurant, but the best thing about this, I mean, Esther and Last Order were funny together, but Last Order and Accelerator had such a good comedy duo thing going on. Their explanations of the food were great, where Last Order would just give this general, "It's a crunchy good food," which does, like, it's crunchy and it's a good food. Okay, that kind of explains things, but it also doesn't explain anything at all. Whereas Accelerator just gave the, I guess it kind of fits with his character, the basic scientific, "It's beef." So, I loved how his explanations were all just very, very serious, like exactly what it was, and hers were just, "It's a crunchy good food. That's a soft good food. That's a fried and hot good food." I loved all of it. It was so, so good. And Esther sees a bit of the girl in Last Order and gets emotional. Again, I'm thinking that she's a family member or a friend. She died somehow. Esther brought her back to life. And that's why Esther feels guilty about using her powers and guilty about teaching her abilities to the people from DA like Hishigata, is because she used her power selfishly. She taught it without fully foreseeing the consequences to that action, even though she knew she shouldn't have taught it to somebody so lightly and openly. And it's come around to negatively affect her, and now she's trying to make things right by stopping the people she taught. So again, it's a very good story, at least from what I am putting together and predicting from it. So Accelerator calls Yoshikawa about DA, and now we had him say her name, so now I can hopefully remember for future episodes Yoshikawa. And it's kind of weird, Yoshikawa and Yomikawa are the 2 of them, but either way. So he calls her about DA and all that, and this is all exactly what I want from the show, really, is what I thought around here, especially getting more into... Hasami comes back later on, I think that's the girl's name, I have it in my notes later on, but I'm not going to get my hopes up too much for her to sort of be an important-ish character, but I kind of want her to be an important-ish character and not just go off into the unknown, because what makes Railgun really special, and why I'm like, I would I would recommend people to watch all three, Index, Railgun, and Accelerator. But what makes Railgun so special that if you wanted to watch it on its own, you totally can, and what totally separates it from Index more than the incredible production quality of Railgun, is that we have our own cast around Misaka. Misaka has her own life away from the story of Index, with characters like Konori Mi, or Uiharu, who doesn't show up that much in Index, even though she shows up a little bit, or Saten, or Ruiko? Saten Ruiko? Or is it Ryuko? It's Ruiko. But like Saten, Konori Mi, or Shinobu shows up a lot in Railgun. Characters like that aren't related to the Index story and just give Railgun its own cast, its own feel, like something separate's happening. That's what I want for Accelerator. So I think if Esther sticks around, even if she's not always around, but she shows up here and there, if Hasami maybe stays around and shows up here and there, recurs a little bit. Same with Yomikawa and Yoshikawa, who do show up a bit in Index, but show up more here, I would assume. I think it's good to give this show a feeling of having its own separate cast going on. So I thought all of that was really great and exactly what I want to see out of the show. We then get some more funny slice of life stuff. All of that was really good. I loved Last Order's information I learned from reading books line, and we see all the little Misaka sister clones reading the books. All of that was so good. So then, what's his face? Heaven's Chancellor shows up, says that, okay, here we have her name. Hitakawa Hasami couldn't be saved because she's already been dead a few days, obviously. He's a miracle-working doctor, but maybe not that much of a miracle-working doctor. And from there, I loved the comedy gag they did when Last Order's leaving and Accelerator's like, okay, see if he can fix whatever's wrong with your head. And Juju says, don't eat it. And Lynn makes a face at him and everything. It was so good. But then we learn a bit more with Esther, her going to the morgue with Accelerator. She says that she can control dead bodies, and I loved this line when she's like, I can control dead bodies, but I didn't realize that that's not a dead body, it's a person. That was such a good line, and it shows so much about her character, where she knew necromancy. I guess it's maybe a family thing from what we heard earlier from Hishigata, and she was like, oh yeah, I can control dead bodies, that's my power. And then somewhere along the line she realized, damn, this is disrespectful, these aren't dead bodies, these are people. And from there she set about trying to right the wrongs that she had done, so it's really cool. And from there, she goes and she revives Hasami, and I wanted Hasami to survive anyway, so I'm happy with this. Go for it. And I love the comparison that here's where we got really good into the viewing magic through a science lens thing. I love Accelerator comparing her powers to an Esper's powers, where we know an Esper's powers works via personal reality and all that. And them deciding, okay, in my personal reality I can shoot lightning, and so they can shoot lightning. And he's like, oh, her putting together the memories sorry, in this false soul and everything must just be this extension of her personal reality and stuff. And he was trying to put logic into a magical situation, which was really, really good. And he even reaches in at the magic brain stuff and sees Hazami's memories and all that, and her upset about being a level 2 and everything. And it makes it even more sad because her mother didn't seem that harsh or anything. She seemed, especially in those phone calls there at the end, to seriously care about her and be worried about her, but she felt like a failure and a disappointment for being a level 2. So I love seeing that, and I really sincerely hope she can just join the squad and just be a recurring character and learn to be happy and all that. But I also, it was so good. Seeing the scene from last episode told again through her eyes was so, so good. And then pretty much right there at the end, we're kind of getting at the end of the episode now, Accelerator sees through that scene, through those memories, that Hishigata was lying, because Hishigata toward the beginning of the episode, and this is some great inter-episode storytelling right here, is Hishigata says, hey, don't worry about what we're doing, we're just using the bodies, it complements your killing. But now he sees they're not just using the bodies, they're killing people to get bodies. So not only was Hishigata insulting Accelerator, of course, but he was lying. They're not just using bodies for their own experiments or whatever. They're killing people to get them, which makes it even worse. That's even worse than using bodies for this necromancy stuff, is killing people in order to use the bodies for it. So he steals the acid from the guys that come in to dispose of Hasami's body, and all of that was good, of course, and the episode ends on a cliffhanger with Hasami waking up. So, yeah, all of this episode was amazing, and there are even so many great small, like, facial reactions and stuff that are very, very good. Like, there's this one time when Last Order, you just kind of see the top of her face, like, from the eyes up in the corner of the screen, and somebody, either Accelerator or Heaven's Chancellor, says something, and you see her eyes just glance over to the side at them, and it's so, so good. So all that was great. So many small things. It wasn't as cheesy as last episode when it comes to DA. DA seemed a lot more realistic. Everything with them fit together a lot more logically and a lot more well here. So again, it's just how they're written and how they're presented. Last episode was showing how it can be a bit too over the top and cheesy, to a point where it doesn't make sense, but here it can still be a little over the top and cheesy. But if it's written in a way where it's more grounded and makes more sense, then it just ends up being a lot better. And this episode also brought up a lot of good mysteries and questions for the future. Like, I've been sitting here theorizing and guessing at what I think is going to be going down with Hasami and with Esther's character and this girl. I've been taking some guesses at that, but that just means it's good. We got some mysteries, we got some questions to hook us and make us want to keep watching. I want to see what Hasami's going to do. I was so hoping she would wake up and use her fire powers to go after those guys or something. But who knows? I do hope she ends up being a recurring character, and especially Esther, even though this is kind of her story arc now, and I feel like after this story arc we probably won't see her hanging out with Accelerator that much more, but I would like her to recur a little bit here and there, because she's a really good character. I really like Esther. So yeah, everything was great here. I've talked for 20-some minutes. I've talked for pretty much the length of this episode about how great this episode was and how much I loved it. So I don't think there's anything more I can say to really help out my points at this point. So either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm gonna give it a 9.25. I don't know what to use. 9.25 corpses out of 10. That's not a good one. But yeah, 9.25 out of 10. I really, really, really loved this episode. I thought it was really great. As if you couldn't tell by how long the review is, and how much I just completely complimented every single little thing. But either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like if you did like the video, and comment down there to tell me what you thought of this episode and what you thought of my thoughts on it and all that. Subscribe for more. Toaru Kagaku no Accelerator. I'll be reviewing Index when we get a new season, and Railgun when we get a new season too. But more of this and much more on the channel. I'm also reviewing Fire Force right now that's airing this season. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Follow on Twitter if you want. I can try to keep you updated there and stuff for the channel or talk to you there. If you want a link to the Discord server to talk to me or more of us on Discord, just ask and I can give you a link to that. So it's open for anyone. And if you want a link to the Discord server to help, yeah, I just said that. If you want to help support the channel on Patreon, there's a link in the description, and I'm going to be adding a new weekly series on Sundays that people on Patreon are going to get to vote for. So, yeah, just another new series. If you want to help support the channel, then that's the place to help do it, I guess. But, yeah, that's it. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.